Santa Fe 911, where's your emergency?
They're dead! They have gunshot wounds to the head! They're dead!
It was Father's Day 2011 when Cherie Ortiz walked into her parents' home and found the bodies of her mother and father.
They had been shot in the head, and it had occurred sometime earlier in the day.
I just walked in their house and everybody shot in the head.
The brutality was unspeakable.
The hunt to find the killer would tear the community apart and devastate Cherie.
I really do have hope this is going to get solved.
My name is Sloane Glass. I'm a journalist who covered the Long Island serial killer, the Delphi, Indiana murders, and many other high-profile true crime cases. And now, I'm the host of American Homicide, a podcast where we take you across the country to investigate some of America's deadliest crimes. We'll explore how these murders are shaped by their unique landscapes and how these tragedies have shaped the fabric of these American communities forever. Today, we're in the tiny village of El Rancho, New Mexico, for the Father's Day murders on American Homicide. As a note, this podcast contains subject matter which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised. Let me paint a picture for you. Santa Fe, New Mexico is called the City Different for its rich culture and diverse community. Native American ancestries blend with Spanish culture in a state with one of America's richest landscapes.
Northern New Mexico in particular, it's a very unique place. It's beautiful.
Alex Tomlin was a local TV news reporter who lives in the area.
It has impeccable weather and the mountains are incredible.
The region is home to natural hot springs and wild rivers.
You can drive an hour north and go whitewater rafting, or you can go down to White Sands and enjoy that. But kind of on the outskirts of Santa Fe, you get a lot of the smaller communities.
And one such place is the tiny village of El Rancho. The predominantly Hispanic community is about 20 miles from Santa Fe and is built around co-op farming and churches.
It's a lot of people who have kind of grown there, have families there, kind of all know each other.
But it's also a desolate place.
One of the things about New Mexico is it's so open. When you go to someone's home, often they have a significant sized property. There's not neighbors very close.
And even though the homes are all spread out across the desert,
everyone kind of knows each other, but there is an interesting dynamic here. As much as it's known for its beauty, it's also known for the crime.
The tragic murders on Father's Day 2011 would stretch the fabric of El Rancho to its limits.
So June 18th, 2011 seemed like any normal night.
Cherie Ortiz had dinner plans with her parents, Lloyd and Dixie.
Cherie Ortiz, she lived on the property with the Ortizes.
Her parents and brother lived in a large one-story house, and Cherie and her husband lived in an RV next door. Even though there's a fence around their spacious property, the family had an open-door policy.
Anyone could come in, have dinner at their table, or spend time with them. They were just kind of a good family in this community that was very tight-knit.
Lloyd Ortiz was a man who loved to use his hands. He owned his own ceramic tile business. His craftsmanship turned up in homes and even luxury hotels all over northern New Mexico.
He was an incredibly loving father, a hardworking man who provided for his family, his wife, Dixie.
They sound like a perfect pair. Dixie was passionate about working with the elderly and the disabled. She was an activities director at a local retirement home, and she fostered children with special needs.
They took in a child who had shaken baby syndrome and adopted him as their own, raised that child, loved that child.
That child's name was Stephen. Stephen had special needs from his early life injuries. His brain never developed beyond that of a 9-year-old, but he matured into a young man that his family called the Gentle Giant. He loved to play drums, ride his ATV, and fish with Lloyd.
They were just really giving, loving people, very northern New Mexico, hardworking, love the land, love the culture kind of thing.
Since it was Father's Day, Cherie Ortiz whipped up a plate of homemade enchiladas for dinner. It was her gift. Just before 7 o'clock that evening, she took them and walked next door to her parents. Even though it was June, white Christmas icicle lights still hung on the gutters of her parents' home. Inside, the walls were adorned with crucifixes and some of Lloyd's handmade tiles.
Cherie said she walks in and realizes something's very wrong. She found her mother in bed. Her mother's head was pretty damaged. She thought someone maybe had shot her. She then went into the kitchen area and found what she thought was her father on the kitchen floor. The body was just so impacted by what was used against them. There's these two bodies. There's blood everywhere. She goes screaming out of the house, and for her husband, again, they lived on the property, so it was pretty close.
Cherie's husband, Jesse, ran right over to investigate.
Her husband then comes in the house, and he realizes it's not her father on the kitchen floor, it's actually her brother. And that's when he starts searching around and finds her father outside, right outside the back door, kind of in the field there.
Lloyd's body was found on a cinder block path that connected the Ortiz back porch to their fenced-in yard. He was face down, wearing only his underwear. His eyeglasses sat just inches away. Covering his head was some green shrubbery. By now, Cherie was on the phone.
Santa Fe 911, where's your emergency?
They're dead. They have gunshot wounds to the head. They're dead. They've been dead since this morning.
What is your name?
It's Cherie.
Cherie frantically told the 911 operator that her mother, father, and brother were shot to death.
I just walked in their house and everybody's shot in the head. My brother, my dad, and my mom's still dead.
This was Cherie's second attempt at a 911 call. Since Cherie and her parents' homes were out in the middle of the desert, her cell reception was spotty. Imagine the panic, the fear that your call would drop again when you're trying to get emergency help for your family. And she didn't know where the perpetrator was or if they were still on the property.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I am freaking out. I can't even walk over there because I lose service.
And then there's another problem. El Rancho is way off the beaten path, which delays the response time for law enforcement.
Oh my God, you have to hurry.
They're on the way.
You have to tell them to hurry.
They're on the way.
With no local police force of their own, the New Mexico State Police were dispatched to investigate.
I can't believe they're already dead. I can't believe I didn't come check earlier this morning. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Why? You know, and all because I didn't have money for a Father's Day gift. I didn't want to go until I finished cooking enchiladas for him.
Run.
Oh my God.
Cherie stayed on the phone for nearly 20 minutes before officers arrived.
All units are going fast as they can to get there.
I'm going to walk to the gate and wait for them. I'm like too nervous just sitting in my yard.
My name is Paul Chavez. I was a member of the full-time crime scene unit as an agent with the New Mexico State Police.
The 200 homicide cases Officer Chavez worked in his career didn't prepare him for what he saw inside the Ortiz house.
In this case, the magnitude of the violence involved was the worst that I had seen in my career. The brutality was unspeakable. Cherie Ortiz had found her parents and her adopted stepbrother dead within the residence. She reported that they had been shot in the head, and it had occurred sometime earlier in the day.
It turns out that although Cherie said she didn't see who committed these murders, she did hear something.
There was reportedly gunshots heard the previous night in the area.
Now, hearing gunshots isn't entirely unusual in New Mexico, but Cherie and her parents' homes sit on a dead-end street in the rural New Mexico desert. It's a remote area with unpaved roads and no nearby streetlights. Their nearest neighbor is about 50 yards up the road. Inside the Ortiz home, Officer Chavez and his team assess the situation.
Once I enter into the residence, there is a master bedroom immediately to the left as you walk in, and that is where the first victim, identified as Dixie Ortiz, is in her bed, in her nightgown, under the blankets.
Dixie was found clutching her pillow.
Her upper extremities and her head is completely saturated in blood, where she had sustained apparent trauma. From that bedroom, there's a drip trail which extends to the kitchen area, where we have a second victim, a young man identified as Stephen Ortiz.
Stephen, her adopted brother, lay face down in a pool of blood, wearing only his underwear. Police noted that he took the brunt of the attack.
The scene was absolutely brutal.
Stephen was 21 years old at the time of his murder, and based on his injuries, police believe that he tried to fight off the killer before ultimately losing that battle.
The blood continued from that area out the back door, where the third victim, Lloyd Ortiz, was found outside the back porch. There was a significant amount of bloodshed, indicating that he did sustain some massive trauma. And there was also shrubbery from a nearby bush that was covering his head.
That's 2 bloodied bodies inside the home and 1 outside. And then something else stood out to law enforcement.
There was a small marijuana grow on the property. It was fenced off and padlocked. They did have a medical marijuana card for Stephen for some of the medical conditions he had.
But none of the 17 marijuana plants appeared to be disturbed. In fact, nothing seemed to be stolen or even out of place. On the kitchen table, in plain view, sat Lloyd's wallet containing hundreds of dollars.
This did not look like a robbery. It looked like a case of anger. A lot of anger based on the brutality that occurred.
It was a Father's Day to forget for residents in this tiny suburb of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Lloyd and Dixie Ortiz were pillars of the tight-knit El Rancho community. They were quick to lend a helping hand to others in need. So who was angry enough to harm them? And why? Like many others in the community, Pastor John Trujillo was in shock.
I get a phone call. They call me PJ, Pastor John. It says, PJ, they found Stephen, Lloyd, and Dixie dead. I said, what are you talking about? Was it a car accident? What happened? He says, no, it seems like they were murdered in their home. You need to get down here right away. And as I drive up, the community is already showing up. State police are there. And about that time, Cherie made her way out, and she was just in tears and tears and tears. And just, Pastor John, my family's dead, my family's dead. Somebody murdered my family, somebody killed my family. How do you handle that? What do you do? I mean, can you imagine the emotional and physical and just spiritual distraught that you would face? Nobody can prepare for that. I don't care. Nobody's prepared to walk into a scene like that, especially the daughter. The family was grieving and they were mourning. It's El Rancho. This isn't supposed to happen in a community like this. People are, speculating that could this have happened from the community? Did somebody come here from somewhere else? Was it a family member? Was it a friend? Was it a robbery that went wrong? Why? It was like, okay, we need some answers.
Since El Rancho didn't have a police force of their own, the New Mexico State Police handled the investigation. By morning, the police still didn't know much.
We're still unsure as to what happened out there. The guys are still working very hard to determine what exactly happened, but at this point, we still don't know.
How in the world could something like this happen? One person dead, okay, but when there's 3, it raises a lot of questions.
Police believe that 3 victims were shot to death inside their home, but nothing appeared to be missing. Investigators wondered if it was a murder or a murder-suicide. Officer Paul Chavez was one of the first responders.
My role primarily is to process and document the crime scene and try and make sense of what occurred there.
But the severity of the crime scene limited what he was able to do.
You can't disturb the body much. And with the amount of bloodshed that was present, we weren't able to assess the wounds as well as we would like to have been able to.
So originally, the police believed all 3 victims were shot to death. But the results of the autopsies for each victim revealed something far more personal.
That these were in fact not gunshot wounds. They were actually lacerations that were penetrating with a blunt object.
Clearly, something was missing. When the police returned to the scene of the crime, they found a 5-pound pickaxe lying on the ground just over the fence of the adjacent property. And the pickaxe contained bloodstains.
What the pickaxe did provide us was DNA from all 3 victims. So we unequivocally had our murder weapon. However, we were unable to forensically link a suspect to the pickaxe.
So what does that mean? A murder weapon with DNA of the victims, but nothing to indicate a suspect?
It could mean a number of things, that maybe they were wearing gloves or they covered their hands in some way or shape or form. And just sometimes the lab just can't find it. It's not 100% certainty that they're going to be able to find DNA when something is touched. There's a chance that we will, but it doesn't always work out that way.
So the one thing about the Ortiz murder was really the pressure on the police.
Reporter Alex Tomlin covered the story for a local TV station.
There was an incredible amount of pressure from that small-knit community, but also the surrounding communities. And so there was a lot of pressure on them to get who did it, make it a clean investigation, and let's get this person behind bars. And I'm sure at times that pressure was overwhelming.
The people of El Rancho couldn't shake the fear that they could be next.
Nobody wants to think that they're going to go to sleep and somebody who's pickaxed a couple and their son to death is going to come into their home next.
They even refused to talk to TV reporters, not because they felt pestered, but they were fearful of their own safety.
And that's the other terrifying thing. Think about the strength it takes to push that pickaxe back multiple times and pickaxe someone to death. That is cold-blooded. That is calculated. That is incredibly scary for a community because that person is dangerous. You know, when you can't easily tie up a case like this, when you can't say, oh, it's, a scorned lover or it's, a drug deal gone wrong or different things like that, then it becomes well, am I next? You want to find who did this because you don't want the community looking at you and saying, what are you doing? Why aren't you protecting us? Why don't you have the answers?
With no suspects, a weapon and murder scene free of any DNA, investigators started to look at the person who first discovered the bodies. That person was Cherie Ortiz.
When something this horrific happens, the community wants answers, and they want them quickly, right? So you want to be able to tie a nice bow on this thing and be done with it. And Cherie and her husband seemed like that nice bow. They lived on the property. You could come up with a motive.
The police wondered if Cherie and her husband Jesse knew more than they were saying, especially after they listened back to Cherie's original 911 call.
She's very frantic in that 911 call, as you can hear.
They're dead. They have gunshot wounds. They're dead.
She made some comments on that 911 call about, they must have been shot because of how they looked.
I just walked in their house and everybody's shot in the head. My brother, my dad, and my mom's still dead.
It wasn't later until the Office of the Medical Investigator determined that actually they had been pickaxed to death.
And you have no idea who would have done that?
Oh, no.
Do you see anybody around?
No, I didn't even know. I didn't even look. I just freaked out. Oh, my God, they were such good people. Oh, my God, 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 oh, my God. We have to hurry.
Desperate and upset, Cherie spent 17 minutes on that 911 call. But as investigators listened back, they zeroed in on a comment Cherie said. Now, listen closely to what Cherie told the operator.
They've been dead since the morning. They've been dead since the morning.
So Cherie said her parents had been dead since that morning. How did she know that? And why didn't she call 911 till 7 that evening?
I can't believe I didn't come check earlier this morning. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Why? And all because I didn't have money for a Father's Day gift. I didn't want to go until I finished cooking enchiladas for him.
They 100% thought she was a main suspect.
I can't believe this is happening.
For months, Cherie and Jesse felt the stares and heard the whispers. Their pastor, John Trujillo, tried to be the voice of reason.
I think when you have to go through that, like Jesse and Cherie did, I think it was just a reassurance that said, listen, you need to do this. You need to go through this. Just cooperate with the state police, investigators, whatever you need to do, because it's just a process of elimination. They're looking for answers just as much as everybody else is. And they need a starting point somewhere. Just go through the process, answer the questions, be honest, be truthful, and let them eliminate you. And then they can move forward from there.
So there were a number of red flags that required us to investigate Cherie and Jesse to the fullest.
State Police Agent Paul Chavez told the difficult line of questioning a mourning Cherie.
Could family gain from the death of the victim? Sure, they can if there's insurance policies in place, or is there property in place? Is there something to be gained? That's definitely something that was going to be looked at.
Investigators asked about Cherie's credit card debt and the fact that she didn't pay her car loans or even the rent on her RV. And then there was this. Cherie also told investigators that she had removed $80,000 in cash from her parents' home. But she didn't tell this to police until 3 days after the murders.
Jesse and Cherie involvement couldn't be ruled out.
Jesse and Cherie told detectives that they were at a local casino on the night of the murders. But
there was some conflicting statements between Cherie and Jesse.
The triple murder that rocked the close-knit village of El Rancho turned friends into enemies, families into suspects.
At the time, there was a lot of speculation about her and her husband and whether or not they had been involved in this crime.
Alex Tomlin worked as a reporter for a local TV station.
The case was a little bit cold at this time, and we got a call saying she's willing to talk to you.
Cherie was on the defensive and wanting to publicly clear her name. So she scheduled an interview with Alex.
Cherie offered to show me the home where her parents had lived and had been murdered.
Alex met Cherie at her home and interviewed her just steps away from where Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen were murdered.
I remember distinctly being in the kitchen, and we were talking about her brother, Stephen. And, when the autopsy came out, he had held about a dozen or so blows, I think, about maybe 17 blows. And I remember her talking to me about how he was such a big guy, that he was kind of a teddy bear, but he was such a big guy. And it's such a weird sensation when you're standing in someone's kitchen and you're seeing marks on the floor and you know their body had been there. And, she cried a lot during that interview, understandably, but really thinking about this young man coming out who didn't really have the cognitive ability to understand what was happening, very much still a child kind of in a man's body. And to have that many blows to him, my only thought in that moment was he must have been trying to protect his parents. He must have been really scared. He must have really fought back. And that was just so sad. It was so sad to think about those final moments and what that must have been like for him, either knowing that he was dying or knowing that something had happened to his parents. It was just really traumatic, standing there and knowing this is where he died, and he died in such a violent way.
With the cameras rolling, Alex asked Cherie about the investigation.
I believe they're going through it with tunnel vision, just specifically focusing on us instead of the real people. I know it had to be people. How could one person do that?
So it left this very weird sensation in the community where some people were still speculating, other people really believed them. Why would they do this?
Cherie said her parents had life insurance, but she could not collect that money since she and her husband were considered suspects. And without that money, Cherie said they couldn't pay their bills and worried their homes would be foreclosed.
So it was really this sense from her of trying to advocate for herself, but advocate for her parents and her brother, to say, I need to know who killed them. And at the same time, I need people to know it wasn't me. And so that was really what the conversation centered around.
We could lose everything my dad worked so hard for.
I actually saw marks on the floor and different things like that where this had happened. It was a really horrific experience.
Something has to give. I really do have hope. I know this is going to get solved.
With tears in her eyes, Cherie then looked into the camera to try to clear her name and her husband Jesse's as well.
We had nothing to do with it. My God, that was my mom and my dad and my little brother.
It was no secret that the two were being looked at in the triple murder. But were they that desperate for money that they would murder their own family? Paul Chavez investigated.
If you don't investigate Jesse and Cherie to the fullest, you make a very easy argument for a defense attorney to create doubt in a jury's mind. And that's exactly what would have happened if we had not followed up on all of the red flags that came up during the course of the investigation.
But as the investigation dragged on, Cherie shifted the blame back on the state police. She claimed that they botched the investigation and said casino security guards or even children could have done a better job. Against the advice of law enforcement, Cherie even set up a P.O. box where people could anonymously submit information about who might be responsible. A year after the murders, the police promised a press conference to share some breaking news on the case. But that press conference never happened.
There was a lot of leads that came in that were followed up on, but none of them panned out.
A billboard even went up along a local highway with a picture of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen that offered a $1,000 reward for information. But still, there were no arrests.
That was the hardest part of this case for me, was knowing that we have not been able to bring justice for this family.
And it wasn't just Cherie who was pressuring the New Mexico State Police. Here's TV reporter Alex Tomlin.
There was an incredible amount of pressure from that small-knit community, but also the surrounding communities and pretty much all of the state saying, you've got to find who did this. You could not take a family who more people said nice things about and have a more awful thing happen to them. I mean, they are bludgeoned to death with a pickaxe.
Publicly, the police didn't reveal much about other potential suspects, but behind the scenes, it was a different story. Aside from Cherie and her husband Jesse, investigators interviewed numerous people. Then, 16 months after the murders, a local 23-year-old woman named Ashley Roybal got arrested. While she's in custody, she tells the police something astonishing.
Is it okay if we call you Ashley? All right, I understand that you know some details.
I know who did it.
Ashley tells detectives that she knows who killed Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz.
It isn't until Ashley Roybal gets in trouble that all of a sudden she's willing to tell police what happened.
I'll just let you go ahead and tell me the story.
It was almost like the answer everyone had been waiting for.
Ashley Roybal kept quiet for 16 months. During that time, Cherie juggled losing her mom, dad, and brother while being looked at by everyone as a suspect. All while she couldn't collect their life insurance money and was scared she'd lose everything. But now, 16 months later, Ashley was finally ready to talk.
And this was the turning point in the investigation.
All right, Ashley, you have the right to remain silent. If you give up that right, anything you say can be used against you in court. I understand that you know some details.
I know who did it.
Imagine how surprised detectives were when Ashley says she knows who killed Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz.
So why are you telling us?
Because it's not right. Dixie and I are good people. I grew up with Stephen. I went to school with him, you know what I mean?
Yeah, detectives knew what she meant. Ashley Roybal says she was close with all three and mentioned that when her own mother died, it was Lloyd and Dixie who helped pay for her funeral.
I wanted to come forward, you know what I mean? And I couldn't.
So Ashley Roybal was finally ready to break her silence.
I've known Ashley since around 2001.
Pastor John Trujillo first met Ashley Roybal when she was in middle school.
She started coming to church as a little girl. Ashley and her sisters, we absolutely loved. She was always at the church, always. I don't think there wasn't a day that go by that her and her sisters were never at the church. They would come and clean. They would come and help us with the yard. They would help us with performances, with dramas. They were always part of our church. They were always part of our family.
The pastor also knew Ashley outside of the church.
She grew up with my sons because they were all the same age. She even went to prom with my oldest son. And it was strange because she was always willing to help. But as she got older, she became less and less involved in the church to the point where she never came back again.
All he knew is what he heard. Then Ashley went down the proverbial wrong path.
I would hear bits and pieces that she was running with some of the wrong people, with the wrong crowds, drinking, drug use, even to the point where she was even getting involved doing things a little bit criminal.
By the time Ashley turned 25, she racked up a lengthy rap sheet, including 3 felonies. Following her arrest in 2012, she decided to clear her conscience. She told the police she had first-hand information about the 2011 triple murder in El Rancho.
So it was Father's Day today? Father's Day? Okay.
Ashley said back in the early morning hours of Father's Day 2011, Nick Ortiz needed Ashley to pick him up. But why did he call Ashley? Well, despite the fact that she was several years older than him, Nick was Ashley's ex-boyfriend. So this gets a little confusing. Although Nick shared the same last name as Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen, they aren't related, but they did act like family. And along with that, Nick was friends with Cherie Ortiz's son and her brother Stephen. Nick even lived with Cherie for a few weeks when he was having issues with his parents.
She would invite him to stay there, spend the night sometimes. He became, good friends with Cherie, Jesse, the kids, and he was part of our church.
Nick Ortiz also went to Pastor John's church.
Nicholas was there almost pretty consistently, and always willing to help. If we were doing something at the church, what do you need me to do? Or he would go to the youth pastor and say, what can I help out with this? Or what can I do here? And, constantly wanting to be part of what we were doing. He showed himself to be a pleasant young man.
Let's get back to what happened in the early morning hours of Father's Day 2011 when Nick called Ashley for a ride.
Do you remember how he sounded on the phone?
Panicked.
He sounded like he was in trouble?
Yeah. Just come get me, he said.
According to Ashley, Nick said he was near Stephen Ortiz's house, so Ashley drove there. But when she arrived, she knew something was wrong. Nick looked disheveled, and he had a trash bag covering his shoes.
Now, when you picked him up,
He had blood all over his hands. And he's all f***ed up, That's when he told me that he had used a pickaxe. He told me that he got Lloyd first, and then Stephen in the kitchen, then Dixie in the bedroom.
You heard that right. Ashley says Nick admitted to killing Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz.
did he ever give an explanation why it happened?
Well, he told me his intentions were to go and rob them.
Ashley said Nick knew Lloyd had cash and a marijuana grow at the house because he had spent so much time there. But instead of robbing them, Nick killed all three and then left without any money or drugs. And then, according to Ashley, he threatened her and told her she better keep quiet.
And we've talked to Nick a couple times already. But if he decides to give it up and starts naming a bunch of other names, we need to know if you're going to come up.
I mean, I did pick him up that night, but that's all I did.
So as you can imagine, the detectives wondered why Ashley finally decided to break her silence. They spent the next few days looking into Ashley's story, and when they reviewed Nick Ortiz's cell phone records from the night of the murders, something stood out. So they brought Ashley back for more questioning.
There's a lot more that you're not telling us. Again, there's a lot more involvement from some different people, and that's what we need to clarify.
After combing Nick's cell phone records from that night, they learned a third person was involved. So who else was there that night?
Jose.
Ashley said this mysterious third person was Jose.
So why protect Jose?
Ashley said she was protecting Jose because he is her cousin. At the time of the murders, Jose Roybal was just 15 years old. And omitting this information upset detectives.
I don't want to call the district attorney and say she gave us a lot of good information, but for some reason, she withheld this from us. We don't need that.
And that's when Ashley changed her story and admitted that her cousin Jose was also there that night. Reporter Alex Tomlin covered this story.
So Ashley tells the police that they concoct this plan to go over and steal money and marijuana, and that Nicholas knows the house. He knows the family. It's going to be in and out, right? She drops the two guys, Jose and Nick, off at the family's house. The way the story goes from there is Jose kind of backs out, doesn't want to be part of it. But Nicholas decides to go ahead and go in. And he goes in, he commits the crimes, and he calls to get picked up. And she picks him up. He's obviously disheveled. I'm sure he's extremely covered in blood after this horrific crime. And he's thrown the pickaxe, which was later found in the field. Ashley Roybal gives him a place to stay, cleans him up, all that. And really, they all kept quiet.
The police then questioned Jose Roybal, and Jose said Ashley's story was not true. He claims it was Ashley who came up with the idea to go in and murder the Ortizes.
She supposedly gives them socks to cover their hands, trash bags to cover their feet.
Not only that, but Jose said Ashley left out another key detail. She's the one who provided the murder weapon, her grandfather's pickaxe. All of it left investigators wondering who and what to believe.
There's things that kind of don't match up, there's shifting stories, and then of course there's always the element that, again, she was facing her own criminal charges on other things. So with Ashley and Jose, the question always remains, what part did they really play?
Although the cousins disagreed on some major details, they both told investigators that the murderer was Nick Ortiz.
It also just seemed so random. It was almost like the answer everyone had been waiting for, that surely someone must have broken in for something and done this. But at the same time, it's been several years, nobody had heard anything. All of a sudden it comes forward that it's these teenagers. And not only is it teenagers, it's teenagers who had been welcomed with open arms into this family. And that was even more of a blow. But it started to make sense that, well, yeah, because he knew the house. He knew how they were. He knew that he could get in. And supposedly that they had this cash.
Nick was living with the Ortizes, but then just 2 weeks before the murders, Nick had a falling out with them, and Lloyd kicked Nick out. But were things so bad that Nick returned to kill them?
The only thing that adds up to me is thinking about it in the mindset of a teenager. Quick cash, some pot, it's gonna be easy. And it just, but yeah, as an adult sitting here, what? Everything about this is so ridiculous.
The detectives have to figure out who's telling the truth, Ashley or Jose Roybal. And they figured the best way to do that was to question Nick Ortiz.
Your name has come up quite a bit, and we're talking in reference to the Ortiz homicide, which happened a little over 2 years ago in 2011. And I know we had talked to you a few times about it, so I'm hoping that you can run me by pretty much what happened.
So Nick agreed that he was with Jose Roybal the day before the murders.
Me and him were just been hanging out, just normal stuff, drinking a little bit, getting high.
But Nick said he was back home with his parents by 10 p.m. that night.
And then what'd you do after 10 p.m.?
I watched a few movies. I woke my dad up around 1 in the morning and tell him Happy Father's Day. After that, I went to sleep.
It's not easy to make out what Nick is saying, but he told investigators that after watching a few movies, he woke up his dad around 12 or 1 a.m. to wish him a Happy Father's Day. And then Nick said he went back to sleep.
But I have evidence that shows that you're lying to me. I have phone records that prove that you were at a certain place after 10 p.m. and it wasn't home. I've talked to Jose recently, and I know that you guys were together after 10 p.m. I know he didn't drive you home at that time, and if he did, you guys left again later.
I don't know, I was with him and Ashley, I don't know.
Oh, I know you were with them.
Yeah.
Because you want to know something that's really interesting? Her phone shows the same spot. You want to know where that place is at?
Where?
That's the Ortiz residence.
Okay.
You were there that night.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is really the only thing I can remember.
Okay.
We had broken into their house and stole a gun.
You said this was at Steven's house, right?
Yeah.
How'd you guys get into the house?
There was a bathroom window that was open. Climbed into there.
Okay.
And honestly, that's the only thing I could remember that might have happened around there that time.
So Nick admitted to breaking into the Ortiz's house and stealing a gun, but he didn't admit to the murders.
I know you guys did some stuff after that. We've talked to all these people. Nick, we've done so much work. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
These people have finally decided to say, I don't want to lie to you guys anymore. This is what happened. So why are these people putting themselves at or around the Ortiz residence and saying they were with you? Why would they throw themselves under the bus?
I don't know.
This doesn't look good for you, Nick.
I mean, I want this to be over as much as you guys do. Believe me, I do. I'm tired of having to look over my shoulder. I know you guys follow me. I'm not dumb. I see you guys every now and then. And I'm tired of it. I just want it to be over.
After 90 minutes of back and forth, investigators finally had Nick cornered. But they weren't expecting what he said next.
With all due respect to you guys and all that, I'd really like to just stop talking and go home now.
Nicholas, when he was in church, really never told us a whole lot about any of this.
John Trujillo was the pastor at Nick's church.
At one point, Nicholas did. Nicholas came and says, it feels like something's unraveling or coming down the pipe and I just need some prayer. And I said, well, what's going on? What did you do? What happened? He says, well, I can't say anything right now, but can you just pray for me? And you could see that he was very troubled. So we prayed with him. I kind of had my suspicions that this was because of the murders, because, just how distraught he was and how nervous he was and how scared he was. That was a different type of scare. It wasn't like a scare you were gonna get in trouble for wrecking the car or for getting a speeding ticket. This was a deep-rooted fear that I saw in him.
In small towns like El Rancho, everybody knew one another. And if someone was in trouble, it was public knowledge.
So at that point, I'm like, okay, now it's starting to make sense. Now I can understand that deep, deep, deep fear that Nicholas was dealing with because all of this was starting to come undone.
In February 2015, almost 4 years after the murders, police finally put a warrant out for Nick Ortiz's arrest. Cherie and Jesse Ortiz, who earlier were thought to be suspects, were stunned.
They were in shock, almost disbelief. He stayed with them. He was part of their family. He's part of the church family. We couldn't believe it. I was like, the Nicholas that's helping out, the Nicholas that's here every night, the Nicholas, like, I never saw that coming at all.
Nick Ortiz was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder.
Some people were in such disbelief. They're wrong. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. Then you had those that were saying, finally they caught the killer. I knew it was him. I knew it was him.
With a small town divided, Nick Ortiz's trial kicked off in the summer of 2016.
My name is Dan Marlowe. I was hired by Nicholas Ortiz's mother and father to represent him on the charges of murder.
The trial was held in Santa Fe, New Mexico, about 25 miles from the murder scene.
I've done a lot of trials. I try not to overreact to anything, to just be neutral and fair and even-keeled. But, I have to say, I was uncomfortable, with the large contingent of people from El Rancho.
The El Rancho group was made up of friends and neighbors of the victims who wanted to see Nick Ortiz locked up for life.
I was concerned that there was going to be some kind of physical confrontation out in the front of the courthouse between the Ortiz family and the group from El Rancho. So there was some sparks there, definitely.
It took the police nearly 4 years to charge Nick Ortiz, and his lawyer thought the case against him was weak.
The defendant in this case had a real tight relationship with the Ortiz family. He was almost like one of their children. He loved both of them, both Dixie and Lloyd, and got along really well with them.
At the time of the murders, Nick Ortiz was just 16 years old. A scroll through his social media account showed a teenager who took a lot of shirtless selfies and posted motivational quotes like, "Your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow." But the thing that stood out the most in the courtroom was that Nick stood just 5 feet 5 inches tall. Was he capable of pickaxing 3 people to death?
Wasn't the kind of person that would do something like this, in my perception. And I believed that he did not do it. I believe that he may have had something to do with planning it or saying, yeah, let's go in and get this money. But he did not want anything to do with the physicality of killing these people.
At the trial, jurors heard from 2 witnesses testifying that they heard Nick admit to the murders. But one of those witnesses was incarcerated at the time of the trial. Cherie's son, Robert, also testified. He said he was friends with Nick Ortiz and that Nick joined the family on trips. They were generous to him. Nick even lived at their house for a few months while he was having problems at home. But things changed just 2 weeks before the murders. Lloyd caught Nick trying to steal from them and kicked him out. As heartbreaking as it is to hear Robert's testimony against Nick, the prosecution's 2 key witnesses were cousins Ashley and Jose Roybal.
Both of those individuals were cousins. and Jose knew Nicholas. They were bros, so to speak, considered themselves to be gang members, although there was no gang that they were really associated with.
Ashley testified that the plan was to rob the Ortizes of money and marijuana, and that she was simply the getaway driver. But her cousin Jose disagreed. He said it was Ashley who came up with the idea of murdering the Ortizes. Although their stories differed, they did agree on one thing.
Both he and Ashley said that Nicholas was the one that did it. And Jose and Ashley's story did not match in any way during the planning, after the commission of the crime, all of that, which showed me that there was some problems there. There was conflicts in the testimony.
Aside from their stories not matching up, the defense claimed both witnesses had some real credibility issues. Ashley was in her mid-20s and already had 3 prior felony convictions. When she was facing new charges, that's when she decided to cooperate with the police and named Nick as the killer. The defense pointed out how prosecutors offered Ashley some leniency in exchange for testimony.
And she and Jose were real tight. They were first cousins. They had every reason to put the blame on Nicholas in order to get out of it. Huge motive.
Jose Roybal was just 15 years old at the time of the murders, and in exchange for his testimony, he received immunity.
Of course, I'm a naturally suspicious person because I'm a defense lawyer, but these are the kind of things that I look at. It didn't set right with me.
The defense argued that there was no physical evidence linking Nick Ortiz to the murders.
There was nothing. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, nothing.
Nick Ortiz did not take the stand in his own defense, but his parents did. They testified that on the evening before Father's Day, they all had dinner together and then watched movies. Nick's father said he was in bed just after midnight when Nick came into his bedroom to wish him a happy Father's Day. His mother had even more to say. She said she saw Nick sleeping on the couch when she returned home from work the next morning.
Basically, they saw him earlier that evening, and then they didn't see him for a while, and then he was there the next morning.
But even though the intention was to help their son, they did him no favors when they shared this. They said Nick never stayed at Cherie's house. The only time he spent any extended period away from home was with a relative. The defense then shifted back to the murder victim's daughter, Cherie Ortiz.
Cherie was always complaining about not having any money, always, whining about it, and her conflict with Lloyd, and the fact that she needed money and was willing to do anything to get money. That's why I suspected that she was part of it. And I still do suspect that, and I probably always will.
The case went to the jury on the Thursday before Memorial Day. By the following Wednesday, a week later, the jury remained hopelessly deadlocked. Just 8 of the 12 jurors voted to convict Nick, which resulted in a hung jury.
Which means a hung jury is a mistrial. Then you just retry the case again.
6 months would pass before Nick Ortiz's retrial. He was retried just after Thanksgiving 2016. Prosecutors painted Nick as a cold-blooded teenage killer. But the defense claimed that Nick had been set up, and the real killer was Jose Roybal. Dan Marlowe was Nick's lawyer.
I believe that Jose was hired to do this killing. And I think somebody else came in there and cleaned the scene up completely so that there was no prints, there was no DNA. It was not what you would think would happen in a scene like that.
Although Jose Roybal freely admitted that he was at the scene that night, he was never charged in the Ortiz case and received immunity in exchange for his testimony against Nick.
He never spent a day in jail on this, not even an hour. He wasn't even a suspect.
So the defense lawyer told jurors that Jose walked around free as a bird with blood on his hands.
There's no way around that, in my opinion. Who knows what a jury's going to do? Nobody.
This time, the jury deliberated for 2 days and then returned with a verdict. On the 3 counts of first-degree murder, they found Nick Ortiz guilty. Nick buried his head in his hands as his family members inside the courtroom burst into tears. Then things got ugly. Nick was handcuffed and ushered out of the courtroom. His mother shouted profanities at prosecutors and vowed to appeal. The prosecutors didn't say a word and just exited the courthouse. For Cherie Ortiz, the nightmare for her and her family was finally over. Or was it? About 9 months later, a district judge reversed Nick Ortiz's conviction. In front of a packed courtroom, the judge said there had been a fundamental error with the jury instructions in the second trial. The courtroom was stunned. Nick Ortiz's family erupted in excitement and hugged one another. Even Nick's lawyer was surprised by the judge's decision.
It was highly, highly unusual.
Cherie Ortiz quickly exited without speaking to reporters. And the judge never elaborated on what was the fundamental error in the jury instructions. He also ordered that Nick be tried a third time. But then in 2019, 2 years later, and 8 years after the murders, the New Mexico State Supreme Court struck down the ruling and upheld Nick's conviction. And here, the decision came down to a technicality. Nick's legal team didn't file his appeal within the 10 days from the time of his conviction. Whether you believe Nick is guilty or not, it seems crazy that a lack of paperwork is what resulted in him getting a conviction. Defense lawyer Dan Marlowe agrees. He called the decision disgusting and cowardly.
Just bothered me a lot.
As for Nick's former girlfriend, Ashley Roybal, she was charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon and tampering with evidence. As part of her plea deal with prosecutors, she'll serve no more than 10.5 years in prison. Meanwhile, Nick Ortiz faced up to 93 years behind bars. His lawyer argued that Nick needed rehabilitation services like therapy and probation, not prison time. The judge disagreed and sentenced Nick to 25 years for each count of first-degree murder. But Nick caught a break here because the judge allowed Nick to serve those sentences concurrently.
He is given 25 years, and in New Mexico, he will earn good time.
TV reporter Alex Tomlin covered the story.
So he will not spend, most likely, those 25 years in prison. He will be out before that.
New Mexico state law mandates Nick Ortiz to serve at least 85% of his 25-year sentence. With good behavior, he could be eligible for parole sometime around the year 2036, when Nick will be in his early 40s.
New Mexico has some interesting sentencing laws.
Cherie Ortiz called the sentence a slap in the face to her family and the New Mexico justice system. She placed the blame squarely on the shoulders of the judge and said she believes the New Mexico justice system is broken.
If you're part of the Ortiz family, it's never going to be, oh, this is Cherie and her husband. It's always going to be, oh, yeah, your parents were murdered. Oh, yeah, your brother was pickaxed to death. You know, it's always going to follow them. And it's going to almost kind of be like a scarlet letter.
Today, Cherie Ortiz and her family still live on the property where her parents and brother were slaughtered.
And I hope for her she's found some peace and that mourning doesn't haunt her.
While Ashley Roybal and Nick Ortiz received time in prison, Jose Roybal got off scot-free. And listen to this. In 2019, Cherie Ortiz told a local newspaper that Jose had even asked to collect a reward for helping to solve the murders.
It becomes almost every man for themselves. And that's kind of what happened in this case. Every man for themselves.
Pastor John Trujillo continues to pray for Cherie Ortiz and the community.
They're a very loved family in our community. The church backs them, the community backs them. Cherie's recently become a grandma. That helps with the healing process. It does. But this will always be there. It'll never, ever go away. It's hard enough to lose a family member to death, but to lose 3 through murder, that's a tough one.
Yes, it is. So as you can imagine, the Father's Day holiday continues to be a painful reminder in El Rancho of the grisly murders of 2011.
This will always stay in our hearts and in our mindset that on Father's Day, this horrific crime took place. But it didn't have to end this way. It didn't. If it was a burglary that even went wrong, run. But to end the lives of 3 innocent people like this makes no sense at all. I've been pastoring this community for 20 years. We've never experienced or seen anything like this, and I pray we never ever do again.